Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, we got something special today. I haven't really done one of these in a while. Matter of fact, I haven't even talked about creationism in a while, which is going to change. I need to get back into that. I know it's low-hanging fruit. I get that. I know it's not that difficult to debunk creationism. I get that as well. But it is one of my, more passionate subjects, trying to get rid of creationism on the planet. I mean, it's like the anti-flat earthers, their thing is getting rid of flat Earth, which is mine too, but they're more skilled in that area. I happen to think that I probably have a little bit more knowledge in rebuking a lot of the younger creationist narratives. Not in depth, not like Bill Ludlow and Jackson Weed and those guys, but I have a pretty good basic understanding enough to kind of talk to people that are younger creationists and try to explain to them why it's BS. But I have a friend, Jimmy Hill. I don't know if you guys know him from Facebook. We go kind of way back on Facebook. He's been involved in a lot of groups. He's been hanging around the Atheism Experience and my channel for quite some time. But he messaged me and he wanted to have a conversation about his experience leaving creationism and why he no longer believes young Earth creationism and that kind of story. And I think it's going to be interesting. I normally don't do these types of stories because you kind of heard one, but you heard them all. But I think this one's going to be a little bit different. He's a real nice guy. And I just want to really kind of dive into some of the stuff that made him who he is today and why he no longer believes that narrative. Because I think it's important that other creationists will hear these types of stories and go, maybe I will be this person one day. Maybe I do need to rethink my positions, because as we all know, the creationist narrative is just completely wrong. And I'm not saying that has anything to do with God. I'm not saying that has anything to do with theology whatsoever. I'm strictly talking about from a scientific point of view that the earth is not 6,000 years old. Man did not walk with dinosaurs. That is just abysmally wrong, to the point of just being so farcical that I really do place it just marginally above flat earth. To me, they're pretty close. But anyways, Jimmy, welcome, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So why don't you kind of start us off here? First, tell people who you are if they don't know who you are. Some people don't know who you are. I know Bill Ludlow knows who you are and stuff like that because you're in a lot of the groups that we're in. But tell them who you are and why you want to talk about this. You are active, yeah, and I love that, actually. But why are you active?
Yeah, I'm active on Facebook. I'm active on YouTube because I like to talk to people. I like to discuss these kind of ideas. I grew up with the idea that this is the most important book ever written, the Bible, so we need to learn it, we need to discuss it. And even though I don't believe it today, I still think it's important because other people believe it, and we need to discuss it with them. I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way to explain it. Did these things really happen? When it comes to the 6,000-year-old Earth plane, I no longer believe that. I grew up believing it, and I kind of transitioned into whole Earth creationism. Then I started questioning it, and when I started watching the Atheism Experience, I would have called myself an atheist. Now that I understand some more definitions a little better, I call myself like just mildly agnostic.
But okay, so you at one time you actually were a young Earth creationist, right? So what was it that actually made you leave that? And then you were watching the Atheism Experience, and then you migrated from calling yourself atheist to now agnostic?
Yeah, because what I was taught is like atheist is just like a lack of belief. You just don't believe the claims, and no burden of proof. That's easy to say. I just say I'm a non-theist, but these definitions have proper definitions, and we need to use them. And atheism is the belief that there is no God. I don't know if I really believe that because I do question it still. The younger creationist God, no longer. But just the concept of God, I'm still open to. I could be proven wrong. I don't know if God can be knowable, but I'm not saying someone else doesn't know.
Yeah, and I don't hold the position that gods are not knowable. I think that I could come up with a plausible or scenario where I can say that we can know God or know God does not exist given enough time. I mean, it depends on your theory of knowledge, and this is the critical part. There's a lot of different types of theories of knowledge, and if you appeal to one over the other, then I think that somebody can make a case that we can say, I know God exists or no, God doesn't exist at a certain time. I don't think we're there yet. That's why I'm called a temporal agnostic, because I just don't think we're at that point. But I think of, like, for example, 500,000 years from now, a million years from now, if the human race exists in any capacity, we'll definitely be different species by then. We'll be living in the different planets. Earth will be a long gone, distant memory for the most part. By that, if somebody it did have a belief about any types of gods, especially, for example, like the Christian God, if Jesus hasn't come back in a million years, I think even the most diehard Christian would say, yeah, I no longer believe. And they actually could probably make it into a knowledge claim given whatever theory of knowledge they're using at that point, because I think that one could justify that at a certain condition. I just don't think we're at there now. I think there's just too much deliberation on the topic, unfortunately, to say knowledge. Now, belief would be a different case, but to qualify saying I know God exists or I know God does not exist would take a lot of effort that I think a lot of people are not willing to put into when it comes to the philosophical justification for that. I don't think I've ever seen anybody really give a good overall global position for that, but maybe there is. I don't know, but. Okay, so what? So tell me about your upbringing, about how you were not permitted to even learn about evolution, and that this was something that to you was considered to be heretical, I guess, right?
Yeah, so I grew up in southern Ohio when I was really young. When I was 7, I got baptized. Church still just down the road from where I live today. When I believed in it, this is what I was taught from adults. And, when you're a child, this is what, you accept. You're trying to learn what you can. You trust your adults around you. And everyone around me was telling me this is how it happened. I would go to church. I would go to Sunday school where, I was taught. I remember the stories about Noah's Ark, how it happened as they teach the kids. And then I would kind of get a little older and I was going to listen to, more the adult version, main sermons as they taught everything that happened, and they taught it as it literally happened. Noah took 2 of every animal on the earth, every person descended from Noah and his sons. And when I got to high school, I hadn't been to church that much anymore, but it was still, in my mind that this is kind of how I kind of conceptualized, started learning more about, I really like science. So Carl Sagan and science documentaries on the History Channel, I try to watch that stuff. And so I was learning more about the cosmos and the Big Bang, but I never really tried to fight the ideas. They just always existed in my head. I didn't really think about it. In high school, when I went to high school at Baraboo High School in Baraboo, Wisconsin. And there, you're supposed to have a biology and a chemistry credit graduate, but there's, I guess, this loophole where you can just take 4 agricultural credits. And there, that evolution isn't discussed. We talk about animal husbandry. We talk about zoning in the country living, things that people need around the community. It's useful information, but the person teaching it obviously didn't believe in evolution, and he mentioned it a couple times as this silly idea. When he said it was like taking the parts of a remote control, putting them in the box and shaking them up, and when you lift the box up, it's fully put together as evolution. I knew that was wrong, but I didn't have the information to say why it was wrong.
But something didn't register with you. You're like, something is amiss here.
My mic's going out?
No, I said, but you recognized it enough to know that something was amiss there, that something just didn't make sense with that narrative.
Yeah, I didn't know why he was wrong, but I knew that wasn't right. That's not what it is, but I don't know what it is. So after high school, YouTube starts becoming more popular. I start finding channels like the Atheism Experience, which leads me to like Hugo and Jake and the Bible Loaded. It goes to Dark Matter 2025. I start discovering these different viewpoints. I want to find more, so I search more. I found your channel. I found the Great Debate channel, Non Sequitur Show when it was good.
I love that caveat.
I learned
when it was good.
And my position evolved along the way, and I even got to meet some pretty cool people like Bill Ludlow in the chat. I got to be Facebook friends with him too, and I asked him questions. I watched his videos. I love to debate with Kevin Hovind, or I was kind of with Hovind. The first 30 minutes of human evolution, taught me a lot. I just want to know more information. I keep an open mind. the same time, evolution doesn't necessarily disprove the Bible or Christianity, but it definitely goes against this narrative of young creationism. It's kind of Hovind or Ham kind of presents it. It's a false narrative. We can show this doesn't happen. And I just want to be honest about the facts.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the fact that Hovind, has done so much detriment to education and has been so, in the forefront of the creationist movement for decades. And I kind of feel partly responsible for bringing him back a little bit because, as you know, he was in jail for 9 years. And when he got out, he was really kind of marginalized. And I think we kind of reinvigorated him a little bit and gave him some more platforms because I think a lot of his following had left. Now, I think that's being diminished a little bit. I think that he is moving backwards now, only because of the fact that we gave him platform, which kind of gave him some bumps. But at the same time, more people were exposed to his just lunacy. And I think a lot more people are now realizing that Hovind is just a con man. Even people that are creationists are starting to realize that. There are people that actually still believe the earth is 6,000 years old, but still think Hovind is a con man. So figure that one out, right? I mean, I know people that literally know people that go, yeah, I'm a younger creationist, but that Hovind guy, I'm like, okay, whatever. But so when you started to learn about evolution, was it your scientific mind that kicked in and said, hey, this is now starting to make sense to me? And what they're putting out is just a straw man version of it, because that's what most people see, right? When I look at the creationist movement and I look at the narrative that they put out, it's clear that one of two things: either they do not understand evolution, or they're purposely and maliciously trying to make a straw man of it that they can go after, rather than try to tell people this is what actually evolution is. Now I'm going to go after that, because they don't do that. Even the ones that have PhDs, they don't do that. I see them putting out a lot of misinformation too. So I have to wonder, is this something deliberate? Is this something that is an unethical behavior that they have? And if so, then why would anybody want to look into younger creationism? What was your standing on that? Because like I said, you've been around for a very long time. You've been around this channel for a very long time. But when you first got to this channel, you were no longer a younger creationist, right?
No, I still kind of held the position
you were transitioning a little bit. Yeah, I remember. I mean, this goes. I mean, how long have you been around? It's been a long time.
Yeah, I was right at that tipping point, but I started really trying to be skeptical. It's like, what position do I want to test so that I can fairly test certain claims? Do I know that Jesus did exist? Even then, I don't know if it matters. It claim is, was he God? If he didn't exist, obviously the whole claim's gone. But even if there was a man named Jesus, there are claims that he was God. So even if we prove there was some guy there at the event, how do we know that the events are accurately depicted?
Yeah, well, these don't have to be knowledge claims. I will give the theists something, credit, where they're just, unless they say that they know God exists, they're not making a knowledge claim. Now, when they do, I have not met a theist yet that says I know God exists, that's really able to justify that in any kind of philosophical capacity. I don't think they even know what that means to say I know God exists. That is a very different claim than saying I merely believe God exists, and it holds to a very different standard of justification. And I hold the same thing to atheists too. When they say I know no gods exist, they have a hell of a burden too, but most of them shirk. I don't recall ever seeing an atheist saying I know that no gods exist, and here are all my justificatory conditions using theories of knowledge. Why? I don't think I've ever seen that. I'd like to. Maybe some people can do it. I don't know. I don't know who makes those kind of claims. Most atheists I know don't make a knowledge claim because there's no reason to. Atheism itself is a dosastic position. Theism is a dosastic position. But when you're on this tipping point, I mean, obviously the Atheism Experience had a huge influence, and they did for a lot of people, right? Because they were kind of the gateway for a lot of people to migrate into atheism or agnosticism, be it whether they use those terminologies as I do or not is irrelevant. I think that on my channels, I kind of explain things in a very different point of view from a philosophical, more mindset, which you've always seemed to appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you are a Christian and you're just trying to get into this, the Atheism Experience is a great place to look at. but it's just a starting point. You know, a lot of them go on, they say, hey, I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a biologist. Some of them are, but they're just given their view. Everyone needs to be tested. You need to go to other experts. Sometimes the information that comes out may be a little inaccurate. Like something I was just discussing last night and the night before is the definition of macroevolution. Some people use this analogy that is macroevolution is a bunch of steps, and those steps lead up to macroevolution.
Not my favorite analogy, by the way.
Yeah, the analogy is flawed. I used to think it was a good one, but and that helped me, but it's better to understand why it's flawed too.
Yeah, it's called a heuristic approach. A heuristic approach is something that isn't necessarily quite correct, but it is a way to get people to understand things. And so that macroevolution being a series of microevolutionary steps is a heuristic approach, but it's not quite accurate. You could have macroevolution in a single generation. We've seen this with polyploidy types of wheatgrass and other species. So we know macroevolution can occur because that's a form, any type of speciation I consider to be a form of macroevolution. So that step-by-step iteration, it helps, don't get me wrong. But again, people have to understand how speciation works, whether it's by divergent processes or branching, which is going to be cladogenesis versus anagenesis, which is like a linear thing. They have to understand those things. Else, the creationist model, like people always say, is a Pokemon evolution, right? They just have this weird, bizarre things that half cow, half fish, or you know, jump off a cliff and you should be able to sprout wings if evolution's true. That kind of nonsense.
Yeah, I really was taught like evolution. What I kind of got from the people around me when I was younger was that it was a change in kind. It was changing into something else. And now that I know a little better, what we're really describing is we're talking about clades. We're talking about you can't outgrow your lineage, but you can branch off and you can create new varieties. But dogs are still mammals. They didn't stop becoming mammals when mammals. We had dogs come about.
So what is it when you first we'll go back to Hovind. Hovind loves the expression dogs, beget dogs. Dogs have dogs. Something that no evolutionists would argue, right? I mean, dogs have dogs. Dogs cannot produce a non-dog because, like you said, you don't outgrow your evolutionary heritage. This is the law of monophyly, called Meyer's law of monophyly. So when Hovind purposely, willfully tries to mislead people, because he's been told this a million times, so he's either got to be the dumbest person on the planet, or he's willfully misleading people. I choose the latter, although I think that he's incredibly stupid, but he's not the dumbest person in the world because he's intelligent enough to know how to manipulate people. He's got a skill set for that, like most con men do. So when you hear his argument now, well, evolution, predicts that a dog's going to have a non-dog. Doesn't it like the cackles go up? I mean, your hair goes standing on end because it's like, that's bullshit. That is this creationist nonsense because that's not what evolution would predict ever.
No, I know what evolution is actually saying because I'll go to, I like Berkeley University, their website, because they put a lot of their information out. I'll look at what they're actually defining, look at what the evidence actually is. It's not what he's saying. Macroevolution is not a change of kind into another different kind of animal. I'm going to quote real quick. Macroevolution is describing a pattern of evolutionary change above the level of species. Those patterns are not just the result of change within population lineages, but also include the appearance of new lineage, speciation, and the loss of lineages, extinction.
Yeah. I mean, there's different ways to describe macroevolution, but that's fine. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I relate it more to speciation. I think was it Dostoevsky or who was it that I can't remember the name that actually. There's a German that actually came up with the term. I can't think of his name. Even though I talked about him in a debate. That's how long it's been. But when he coined it, he actually meant it to be a little bit different than how we use it now, from what I remember. But it's still basically
my point is,
not a change of kind.
Macroevolution is, you should ask a biologist. You should not ask Kent Hovind. His doctorate isn't really worth shit.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have a real doctorate in anything.
So if you want to know biology, ask a biologist, not a creationist. They don't know anything. They can be shown to be wrong. They don't change what they know. They stick to a narrative. They have a bias that they're trying to fit stuff into their story, not looking at the evidence objectively. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, even the PhDs, like we had Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson on, and he's a nice guy. Don't get me wrong, and he's very knowledgeable. But at the same time, I know knowledgeable people as well, like Dr. Mays, who clearly pointed out that Jeanson was being intellectually dishonest. I mean, I've read his book. I have it. There's some questionable parts in there, but he's like you said, he doesn't revise anything, and he just kept on him. You didn't read the book, and I know Mays read it more than once actually. That's to me is a dishonest attempt to divert from the criticisms that Dr. Mays was giving, and I see a lot of this with creationists. They don't really want to talk about the criticisms. They do have diversionary tactics. And when you have somebody who has that academic standing, has an actual PhD like Jeanson does, I really have to question their motives because, as you know, they sign a statement of faith, right? And the statement of faith is that any science that goes against young Earth creationism must be wrong by fiat, right? Prima facie, it's wrong. There has to be an explanation other than what we determined by science the explanation to be. This presents a lot of issues. Matter of fact, in Younger Creationism, there's three major unsolved problems, one of which is called the heat problem, which I've discussed with Dr. Humphreys, and I was mentioned in the the Journal of Creationism on this particular topic for the rates when we're talking about zircon decay with Dr. Hinkie and Dr. Lachey. God, it's a hard name to pronounce, Dr. Lachey. And they haven't resolved this, and there's no way they can resolve this. But they just blow it off. They're like, it has to be that way. I literally had asked Dr. Humphreys, why is there accelerated decay? His answer was pretty much because there has to be, because the Earth is 6,000 years old. And I'm like, that's not begging the question, really? I'm like, that to me takes you out of the realm of science, because you're taking something that you have as a conclusion. And you're saying it must be this way, when a scientist will say, well, we might think it's this way, but you know what? Maybe it might be wrong. Let's try to break science. That's what I love about science, trying to break science. That's what a good scientist tries to do. It says, you know what? Yeah, the general theory of relativity, yeah, it works great. It predicts, it models. Let's try to screw with it and break it. That's the guy that's going to win the Nobel. They don't do that in the creationism, right?
I try to do something, try to test a prediction like that and try to break science. I go out, I live in Ohio, so near me is Caesars Creek, and there is a really good fossil hunting area because they dug a spillway near the artificial lake, filled the water, and so you're walking on Ordovician rocks. There's just layers of these storm deposits, and the flood makes a prediction, so I want to test it. If there is a global flood, then there should be a mixture of animals in the water. There should be land animals mixed in there too. We should be finding shark teeth. We should be finding aquatic reptiles, aquatic fish. Everything should be kind of mixed up together. When I go there, I don't find that. I find kind of what evolution is describing. It's trilobites, it's crinoids, it's a sea of fossils that existed before fish. There are no fish found in Caesars Creek. If we found a fish, it would be like an earlier fish, but that would be something. If we found shark teeth, if we found an aquatic mammal somewhere in there, that would be evidence kind of for creationism, but we don't see what it predicts.
Yeah, the hydrological sorting and stuff like that they think turbulent water is going to do is pretty bizarre. I mean, again, none of these guys really bother to explain these things using physics and biology in any kind of cerebral way. I think that a lot of them do it very disingenuously, trying to cater to the people that actually believe it rather than convince people that it's true. I mean, the same thing with flat earthers, right? They tend to, I think, try to cater to the people that already believe it and try to keep them believing rather than try to convince non-flat earthers that the earth is flat, because most people go, yeah, you're an idiot. Same thing with biology. They're like, yeah,
a lot of
an idiot, right?
A lot of people, just like flat earthers, they're not so much interested in convincing somebody. They just want to kind of affirm their own beliefs and the people who believe the same thing.
Right. But
really
theists do the same thing, right? I see the same thing with theists. I mean, even with Dr. Sygart, who I have the utmost respect for, and he's honest about this, which I do respect. But even he says, I'm not here to convert the atheist. I'm here to help the theist that's questioning their belief, which is fine. I mean, I'm not at all dogging him for that. But it's the same principle to an extreme when you're talking about these positions like flat Earth and creationism. Their job is to keep people in the fold, right? And it's the parents' job is to convert the kid and make them believe this creationist stuff. But it's the job of the higher people, the higher in that group, whatever you want to call them, the upper level creationists, it's their job to keep the parents into the fold so they can then make it for future generations. That's how I look at it, at least. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but I could take rebuke on that if somebody thinks it's differently laid out. But that's the way I look at it from an outside observer.
Yep. Something else I wanted to talk about. I wanted to kind of challenge myself a couple of years back, so I went to the Art Encounter. I think it was like either a year or 2 years after it opened. And I wanted to go. It's like, let's see the best evidence they have. I'm going to go for the tour. I'm going to try to be open-minded. And it was basically a bunch of blown-up slides that I've already seen, things that I'd seen already debunked, like the ice layers over that one plane. It was kind of a cool experience. I liked going through it, but it wasn't educational because everything that was in there basically already said a bunch of times. You could basically buy a book and get the same experience. There was nothing new. I wasn't challenged when I went there. It was just kind of, I guess it's just the best I got.
Yeah, well, I mean, during your time as a young creationist, did you have what you consider to be a spiritual experience?
I thought I did. When you believe you have a relationship with Christ, and people who get out of it, they say, "No, I only thought I have a relationship with Christ." And the kind of feeling is just that people think they have it, but there's not anything really there. You can feel experiences. You can have these wonderful moments. A lot of it comes from like the music and the feeling of being in a community with a group and everything together. Feel uplifted, you feel the spirit inside you, but does that come from a God, or does that come from you and the people around you?
Yeah, no, I think I think that's the case in a lot of cases. Yeah, it's a social thing, right? I mean, again,
yeah.
I'm not trying to dog on the theists at this hangout, but I do see it a lot as a social thing that it's a normative that if you feel something, the person next to you is supposed to claim that you feel something too. And I've seen, we've all seen these things, right? I mean, Pentecostals, I mean, the whole, slaying in the spirit, talking in tongues, those are all kind of things where you have an expectation of doing something because somebody else has done it.
You're also expected to memorize the songs that everybody knows. And so when I went there, I don't know the words. I'm glancing at the book, trying to keep along. I'm trying to sing, but it's not my kind of music. And some of the words I'm reading, I'm like, ooh, I don't really agree with that. That kind of sounds weird.
Hey, if they played Metallica, Black Sabbath in church, I'd go more often.
I feel a little uncomfortable. I don't feel part of the group.
Right.
You want to fit in within the group.
Right. You definitely.
And I tried different churches. But again, I never really get that feeling that you had as a child. You can't ever regain that.
Would you go back to church if they started playing Metallica and Black Sabbath? Because I would think about it. Church of Ozzy, that'd be kind of cool. But so
Garden of Eden, like Bart Simpson did.
Yeah, I might be down for that. I like Southern gospel. Like I really do like the revivalist church. That black Southern gospel music where you have a chorus of people singing, upbeat spirited songs. I kind of like that music. I think it's very cool. I mean, I'm not into the somber stuff. I went to a Catholic church once. And I was mortified, to be honest with you. It was back when I was a teen. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I swear to you, I'm still confused to this day. So if I have never really asked a Catholic about that, I recall. Maybe if I did, I don't remember their answer. But I had no idea what the hell I was doing because it was like stand, sit, stand, sit, stand, sit. I'm like, how the hell do you remember when to stand or sit? And why are we doing this? Is there any Catholics out there in the live audience that understand what the hell I'm talking about? I went to a Catholic church, and this big crucifix was on the front, and I thought it was kind of morbid to begin with. I'm not into the crucifix. I don't think that's a very, religious icon to me. It's very kind of sacrilege in a way, if that was the case. But I didn't know when the hell to stand or sit, and I'm like, this is just weird to me. I didn't have an upbeat feeling, but when you go to like a revival thing or Southern Gospel, you feel good, and I have no problem with that. Plus, they're excellent singers. I just love that style of music because I also like blues and jazz and smooth jazz. But this type of church that I see nowadays is quite opposite. It's very like the opposite of feeling good about yourself. It's to lay a narrative that you're a piece of crap, and without some kind of belief that you know whatever they're telling you, you are not a good human being and you're destined to hell. Which again, I've noted many times I don't believe in. So I have a lot of coffee today.
They really. The churches I like, you know, they would start with a band, drums. You try to make people comfortable. People bring in food, coffee, cakes, and stuff, and more of a social gathering before the sermon starts. And I like that where they'll have a story. They'll go into some songs. They'll go stop and priest or minister, whoever will come out. They'll say a story from the Bible and talk about it for a little bit. Go back to the songs, and it's just nothing like that is bad for me. I don't not enjoy any of that. That's music. We're just discussing one of the verses. Everyone around me believes, but that's not bad. But there are some churches I've been to where it's just mantra, where it's just like what you said. It's just that you are perfect. We have the key to giving it to you. We need to sell you something. You need it. Without that, you're screwed. You're going to hell. I like churches that are a little bit more positive.
Yeah, I like to. I went to some churches as a kid that they had like these things for the youth, right? And there were rock bands there. And again, I do think it's to get kids interested in it, right? There's a method for why they're promoting this kind of music to get the kids interested. I'm not going to weigh in on that too much. By the way, you mentioned like in a Garden of Eden, Iron Butterfly. Here's a fun fact for you. You know that if I remember correctly, the guitarist for Iron Butterfly, when he was in the group, and they have that song "In a Garden of Eden," which is later called "In a Garden of Eden," he was 15. Do you know that? Now, I'm pretty sure on that. I'm not Googling it. No. I'm just having my coffee. But if someone's checking on that, if I remember correctly, in Garden of Eden was originally supposed to be in the Garden of Eden, but they were mumbled. But the guitarist was 15, if I remember correctly. So he was one of the youngest guitarists to be in an actually popular band. Fun facts you learn on my channel. Excuse me. I've had a really lot of coffee today. Because, we're supposed to have caffeine corner, but Cheshire isn't here.
Well, I got soda. I don't drink coffee.
Well, that's
I don't
caffeine.
drink for rum and cola, but I got cola, so that's caffeine.
Cheshire will be coming back, people. She's just on a little mini vacation. She's taking some time away. She hasn't left us yet. Give it time. They always leave. This is the way it is, right? They always leave. No, Cheshire's not going anywhere. She's stuck here. We kind of like got our hooks into her. But we weren't able to do Caffeine Corner because I didn't really want to do it with anybody else. So we decided to do something like this today. And plus, also at 3 o'clock, we have Dapper Dino. He's going to be having a hangout. He has over 100 subs, 150 now. But he's having 100 sub on his channel. So we're going to be checking that out, I hope, at 3 p.m. my time. So what else do you want to talk about, Jimmy? Again, I still want to like dive into more about, what you were listening to come to the conclusion where you are now about why you've made these transitions between your theological perspectives from young earth creationism to atheism, and now I think you said you consider yourself an agnostic, which, by the way, really bugs people over the Atheist Experience. I know Matt talks about me every so often on the Atheist Experience, and that's fine. The only thing I kind of bugs me is that, first of all, I have nothing against Matt Dillahunty. I think he's done a lot of good. I have a lot of respect for the guy. I think he's a little arrogant. He is smug. He thinks I'm smug. Well, I think he's the epitome of smug, and I just don't think I am that much. But he's never actually talked to me about my positions. He's never come to me and said, "Hey, Steve, I hear you believe this, or are these your positions, so I don't straw man you." That's what I expect from an honest interlocutor. And he's just never done that. At least Aaron and I have had conversations on it. Aaron no longer wants to, and I'm fine with that. And it just gives me the ability to tell people my positions without, having them chime in all the time. But he's never asked me my positions, and all he does is straw man me when he goes on the Atheist Experience and other channels. And that's what it bugs me. Because anybody who watches my stuff knows my positions much better than he does. And they even tell him, dude, that's not what Steve believes. Go look at his blog, www.greatdebatemcommunity.com. I have all my positions on there. Actually, it even says on there, Steve's position to alleviate strawman abatement or something like that, because I wrote them down so people can't say, well, Steve believes this. Well, no, he doesn't. It says right here, this is what he believes, right? That's up for revision, by the way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you and me had a conversation like a year or so back about, I thought, what I identified as an atheist, you would have fallen under that category, but talking to you a little bit better. One, you should really ask the person how they identify, because you can tell more about what they believe than what you just labeled them as. Two, you have a little more nuance of just, what it meant. You like the philosophical definition because you were talking philosophy. Like when we talk about biology, we use biological evolution, not colloquial. We're not talking about Pokemon evolution. So we're talking about philosophy. Let's use the philosophical definitions.
I like that. I don't even care what definitions people use per se among themselves like that. That's never been really my main arguments. My arguments is very simple. Is that, like you said, I mean, what is your position that you hold? What is your beliefs? That's what I care about. But my argument has been that they're telling other people you are this, and by fiat, or Steve's this by fiat, and it just doesn't work that way. You can't tell other people. I don't tell people, hey, look, you must label yourself an agnostic. When I tell them this is what the position would be understood at is in philosophy, that's a material fact that anybody can go look at. And the Atheist Experience and American Republic, or Atheist Republic and American Atheist, they really hate that, because that's not the narrative they've been running, right? And I think they've been lying to people, be honest with you, especially American Atheist. They have outright lied to people. I mean, they're saying, this is what it is, this is what it only can be, there's no other possibility. That's just fundamentally wrong. And when I got in the scene with other people like Ozzy and there's been a numerous amount of people before me talking about this, but I had a bigger platform, I guess, than them. But they didn't like that, because now people are being shown, hey, this isn't always the case. This is not the narrative that they're putting out, and that's all I've been doing, and I get a lot of flack for that. And people even charge me with making a schism in the atheist community when I'm just explaining to people material facts. How is explaining people material facts something that's schism worthy? That was something that I never understood, because this is why I've never lost a debate or discussion on this, because they can't refute the material facts. The only thing they can do is understand them or not understand them. And I see a lot of people that argue with me that just don't understand the material facts, but that doesn't change the material facts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's many types of definitions, and if someone wants to use that colloquial definition, that's fine. I'll talk to you on that level, but I kind of agree with you that, hey, I want to try to do this best as possible. I want the best accurate information. This is what they're saying at philosophy at like Stanford. This is how it's used in discussion. I want to use the proper terms. And so for my own label, I'm trying to accurately label it. If you want to use another one, that's fine, but just at least acknowledge there's different definitions, and someone might want to use.
But they don't. Some of them.
Some
won't acknowledge that, Jimmy. They'll tell you, no, atheism is one thing.
Yeah, atheism is more than one thing. Depends on which definition.
Clearly, but that's what they don't understand. And what's funny is the projection is that they're trying to say that I argue that atheism is only one thing, the belief that God does not exist, and that you must hold to that definition. Nowhere in 1,000 videos that I've done have I ever said such a thing. Nowhere. Which is pretty odd.
I think Matt Dillahunty said words do not have intrinsic meaning. Words have usages. We're using it. This is how we are using it.
Yeah, no, and I agree with him on that. But then he changes his narrative when he'll say something like, Steve's an atheist. Well, in that case, he's just violating what he just said, because I don't use it that way, because that's not how it's understood in philosophy in the literature. Now, I mean, here's the way I look at this. Let's say, like first of all, Matt Dillahunty is not a weak atheist. He believes there are no gods. Right? I mean, you can go back into his older stuff, and he's actually said these things, right? Now, he shies away from that, and I understand for the Atheist Experience why they don't get into that. I'm not belittling them for that. I do, or begrudge them even. I do understand why they don't talk about a positive case, even though they call it positive atheism, but that's not what they mean by it. Their positive atheism, they have a different usage for, but I understand their usage for it, so I'm okay with that. They mean positive atheism just being a friendly face, a positive view of atheism. But in literature, positive atheism means the stance that gods don't exist, right? So it's the same term, but they're using it differently, which you're allowed to do. I really have no issue with that, as long as somebody understands that they're using that term differently than the philosophical literature. I would use, however, positive atheism as the philosophical terminology. I'm not saying the Atheist Experience can't use it differently, not at all. But they can't force their understanding of positive atheism and how they're using it onto me, which I think that what they do with the actual usage of atheism, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think you can force anybody to believe something. The best you can do is just try to convince them and lay out the evidence of your argument.
But let's say
Forcing
that,
someone to accept.
well, real quick, let's say that you let's say you don't hold the belief that there are no gods, right?
No, I don't really have a belief in any gods, but I'm not asserting there are no gods.
Okay, great. All right, so we're both agnostic in that regard. But let's say that you were, part of the atheist experience, and you're gonna call that atheist, and you're gonna say you're gonna label yourself atheist, which is whatever. These again labels, right? So you would have the position that you're an atheist. I'm in the position of agnostic, but we actually hold the same exact position. What we call that isn't really of critical importance to me, right? But what happens is you have people that are out there going, oh wait, Steve and Jimmy have the same position, but he's calling it agnosticism and he's calling it atheism, which is confusing. One of them must be wrong, which neither one would be wrong. It's a semantic issue, so it's not a matter of being right or wrong there. But there's nothing to distinguish between the two, except what you want to call yourself. But what they go is they say, oh look, Steve's forcing Jimmy to call himself an agnostic. Well, no, he can call himself an atheist. We understand the positions. I don't give a crap what the labels are. And yet I get a lot of people telling me that I'm always arguing definition and semantics when I'm doing the opposite. I'm telling people stop doing that, which is really disconcerting to me when people are projecting their own misunderstandings of my arguments, because I don't go around saying you have to be this, you have to be that, label yourself. I don't give a crap what you label yourself. I want to know what your positions are, and stop telling me that I have to change my label because of what you label yourself, right? Not you, but in general.
Yeah. When I talk to people in my everyday life, I have a slightly different approach than on my online life. On my online life, I'm trying to get my definitions as best as I can, because someone's going to screenshot me and try to say I have conflicting views or something. So I go across as like I'm mildly agnostic about the whole thing. I'm not trying to prove there are no gods. I want to just come here. I want to evaluate the evidence. When I talk to other people in religion, around my community, I just say I'm not a theist. I'm non-religious. I don't really give a specific label. I just say, "Oh, you believe in God? Well, I don't, but I'd like to hear what what you believe."
Yeah, I think
I try to come more across as,
Yeah, but isn't that what most of us do?
That way, they're a little more. What's that?
Isn't that what most of us do? I mean, we're more interested in the dialogue and the discussion. I think that, unfortunately, groups like American Atheist, Atheist Republic, and Atheist Community of Austin are more interested in an agenda. They're more interested in pushing their ideology. Again, they're allowed to do that. I'm not interested in that. That's why I'm not a member of those groups. I'm not interested in promoting an ideology or agenda. I mean, if people want to criticize me and say, well, Steve, you have an agenda promoting science and philosophy. Okay, fine. But that's not really the use of the agenda that I'm using. I'm using agenda in a pejorative more sense, right? So when people say, well, Steve, you do have an agenda. Okay, whatever. I mean, the trivial sense, sure. But that's not how I'm using the word agenda. I don't have an agenda per se for political reasons or to push any particular position. I'm not trying to convince people to be atheist. I'm not trying to convince people to be agnostic or theist. I don't care. I just want people to be rational in their approach. And this is why a lot of people, after watching my channel, will say, you know what, I better formulated my position now. I am actually an atheist, or I am actually an agnostic according to philosophy. And that's the label that I'm going to use. Some of them say, well, I understand it now, but I'm going to continue to use this other label. Okay, fine. At that point, good to go. I mean, Nick Suter is one of those people. He understands these topics just fine. He still takes the atheist label. I don't condemn him for it. But that's the goal of me. And so I think for you, you've been hanging around my channel for a long time. We've known each other for a very long time. This is what I think happened to you. You listened, you learned, and said, well, damn, I'm not going to have this knee-jerk reaction to Steve. He's actually right, philosophically speaking, contrary to what Aaron and Matt Dillahunty believe, because they say that, well, Aaron says he has philosophers that agree with him. If so, I've never met one. He's never given me a name, right? Another one of those, they exist, but no name kind of things, kind of like Kyle's lawyer. But they've never told me who these people are, and I would like to have an actual philosopher that agrees with them. And so I think you're one of those people that just opened your mind and you're like, I'm willing to actually critically evaluate things. This is why you got out of younger creationism. This is why you have a better epistemic framework now. And let me ask you, do you think it's helped you positionally when you talk to people like creationists now or theists now? Has learning about philosophy and you solidifying your theological and epistemic framework gotten you further in these conversations and being more productive and fruitful?
Yeah, it's given me the tools to, evaluate the evidence and try to figure out what's sufficient evidence. And, learning syllogisms in philosophy was great help. Learning just how to approach people, especially just don't go out asserting people are wrong. It's a little better to ask them, okay, what is your claim? Let's test it. And I kind of enjoy it. I love asking people questions because a lot of them just run away. They block me. They have an argument and they just keep trying to change the subject, or they just repeat nonsense, which has already been refuted. You go through it, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, very,
I don't know what my online life on Facebook is.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, what's funny, Jimmy? I had a conversation with somebody who messaged me the other day who was really they love my channel. I don't really know who they were at all, but they were just messaging me how much they liked the stuff that I put out. But then they started talking to me about stuff, and one of the things that came up was a discussion I had the other day about humans and animals. And I tried showing them the logic, right? I literally was saying, based upon your argument, this logic must follow. And they were very dismissive of it, going, well, that's just semantics. I'm like, no, this is logic. There's a difference between logic and semantics. Now, there is semantics and logic, but semantics deals with word meanings, right? I mean, you can make a trivial semantic argument about anything. All humans are dogs. Dogs are humans. Therefore, they're a dog. Now, it doesn't make much sense, but it logically follows, right? You can make anything. Yeah. So these semantic arguments where you're just changing a word or something doesn't really have any value to me, right? But logic is going to be valid and it's going to be sound to have a good argument, right? That wasn't what I gave you, was clearly not sound. But the argument I gave him was both valid and sound based upon his argumentation. And I was like, at that point, you cannot just ignore the logic. It has to follow from your argument. But they kept trying to bring it back to, well, you're just talking semantics. Well, no, I'm not. This is what I see scripted. When people are confronted with things like that, they fall back to this script, which is, you're just talking semantics. Well, no, stop falling back to this script. You can't say, if I give you logic, and I gave him actual first order logic, right? I actually wrote it down in 3 things using logical notation. And they're still saying that was semantics. I'm like, you don't understand semantics then, because there's no semantics in there with word uses. There's no words in there. It's literally quantified logic. But that's what I see when it comes to a lot of these people that don't have the ability to actually want to understand the topic, but they just run a script. And that's when I told the guy I'm not really interested any longer. I really don't want to have conversations with those people because they're not wanting to learn. What they want to do is just run their narrative.
Yeah, I think I caught most of what that conversation you're referring to. It depends on how you define animals. So biologically, yes, we are animals, so you have to follow that logic. But if you define humans as separate from animals, like in animal rights, you don't include humans,
Right, exactly.
We're defining a brute animal. We are separate in that category. What you define animal, you have to follow that logic, but it depends on how you define animal.
Exactly. That was exactly my case. Yeah, biologically we're animals, but we're not always talking about in the biological sense, right? So I mean, it is, and somebody, if somebody can actually show this logic is wrong, go for it. But if you say all all humans are animals, I'm fighting for animal rights. I am therefore also fighting for human rights because humans is a subset of animals. You can't escape that logical reasoning.
Yep.
You just cannot do it. That is why we differentiate between animals that we're fighting for rights for and humans, because in that case, we're talking about brute animals, right? We're just not using the word brute, but we're differentiating for a reason, right? This is why we're not talking about biology in that sense of the term. This is why I see people like Aaron and other people get so fixated on word usages. They're the ones arguing semantics. This is why I think they fail in a lot of conversations, because they're so fixated. When I hear people like by definition, my brain just tunes the hell out. Now, like the other day, though, I said something about, why 0 factorial equal 1 by definition. And I had a mathematician, an actual mathematician, chime in on that, and he was actually right. I knew he was right from the get-go. He's talking about permutations and null sets, and there's absolutely the right that zero factorial has to be equal to 1 because of n permeabilities when you're talking about permutations. And that's fine for set theory, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I explained to him, but this is because by definition this is this. And we came to a mutual understanding. We were actually talking about the same thing in different ways, right? I wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. But it's a way of looking at it. And so, I mean, like I said, if you try to do a Taylor series where 0 factorial does not equal 1, good luck with that. But these are the conversations that I love when a mathematician says, hey, I heard what you said on this, but here, and here, check this out. Yeah, you're right. He's right. Those are the productive conversations. But when I have somebody message me saying, well, Steve, your logic is wrong. Okay, why? Oh, because of semantics. That's not a counter argument, right? Because my argument has nothing to do with semantics. It had to do with the fact that you're saying this is a subset of this. So if this is a subset of this and you're including all of this, you have to include all of this. It's transitive in that case.
Yeah, like humans are apes. Apes are mammals. Humans are mammals. You got all
well, ape
that
is just a group
set.
too.
Some people wanted to.
We differentiate on ape
different
though.
Category,
but real quick, we differentiate on ape too. Ape is a group. Ape is not an actual taxonomic clade. It is a group, just like fish is a group. These are actually just constructive groups. They're not actually clades. This is why monophyletically are fish and paraphyletically we're not. So when we're talking about apes, yes, biologically we're all apes. But there are times where you're going to want to distinguish between ape and man, right? So it depends on the type of users we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, all depends on what you defined it as, but if you defined it in that subset, like you were saying, you have to follow it.
Yeah.
You don't get to make special exceptions because you want to.
Well, it's just what people agree upon. I mean, as I explained before, these are definitional facts, and if two people don't agree on that particular stipulative definition, then that's fine. Like, again, I'm not going to say that human rights activists are fighting for, animal rights activists are fighting for human rights, because in that particular case, that's not the definite. I'm not using the biological definition. So when people say, well, you have to use a biological definition of animal, and humans are always animal in every context, I have to push back on that. I have to say, no, that's not true. But you have people out there like Aaron who just will not accept that. To him, humans are always animals in every context. Yet when you bring to them the logic like I just did, oh, that's just semantics. I don't like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Aaron Raw likes to do a little bit of a dictionary battle. He likes his definitions, but we have to agree on the definition. What's the context? What do we mean? It's more important than that label that he kind of focuses on.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. It's just a word, right? I mean, I have a concept. Here's the concept. I'm fighting for a group that I'm going to call animal that it just cannot fight for themselves, right? I'm all for animal rights. It's the fact that, I shouldn't say that. I don't believe animals have rights, but I believe that we have stewardship over animals. So when people are talking about, fighting for animal rights, I understand the concept. The concept is they're fighting for a group, a set of things that are not inclusive of humans because they can't fight for what they're considered to be rights on their own. So these are conceptual things. What do you want to label it? That is semantics, what you want to label it, right? That would be literally semantics. But at that point, we're moving away from what we're trying to talk about is, okay, I want to fight for this group, and I'm not fighting for this group, which would be humans, even though this is a subset of this. This is why we have language. This is why we have a differentiation between these things, because they convey a context. The context is I'm fighting for this set, but I'm not including this set, which is perfectly fine. But in order to do that, I have to extricate humans from animals and have something that eliminates between them. If not, then what's the point? Because logically, they would be inclusive. This is why biological definitions don't always have to be used, for that very reason. And when I see people really focused on definitions, it bugs me because I get accused of it. And yet I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm telling people stop focusing on definitions because they're just descriptions. They're descriptors. They're not prescriptive things, and they're stipulative most of the time, right? They're just, we're going to use this. Okay, fine. I have nothing wrong with stipulative definitions that people agree on. By the way, I apologize. I have a lot of coffee today, and I'm in a chatty mood more than usual.
That's fine. I'm in the mood to talk to you. Anything else you wanted to discuss? I had something about the Ark encounter.
Yeah. I remember that. Go. Yeah, please. I remember you want to mention that.
Yeah. So I think it's on the first floor of this room with a bunch of children's versions of Noah's Ark. When I went in there, it was almost empty. It was not a busy day, but I heard these crowd noises and a lot of children laughing. I walked out of the room, and it's not crowd noise. There's no children near me. They pumped in recorded creepy children's laughter that got louder and louder. Plays on a loop. And it was the weirdest thing because it's just, why would you have that? It doesn't make any sense to me. And it always just sticks in my mind when I think about when I went. It's just this creepy children's room laughter on a loop room.
That would be weird. Yeah.
Most people, when I finally found them, were at the gift shop at the bottom because that was where it was warmest and that was where the food was. The Ark was actually kind of empty, so I got like my own personal walkthrough.
Now, when did you go?
I want to say it was like 2 or 3 years ago. I can check on Facebook. I took pictures, uploaded them right away. So I think it was like October or November in the year, maybe 2015 or 16.
Okay, but that's when you were just is that when you were on the cusp?
That was when I was really kind of like younger. Creationism doesn't really have any sounding, but I was still kind of considered myself not a Christian, but I still kind of believed in some sort of Jesus. But at that point, it's like I want to test myself to see what they've really got. I've seen stuff online, but let me go actually experience it and, walk into the lion's den kind of. But at that point, not really younger creationism, but still maybe an older creationist.
Yeah,
but
I can
after
imagine.
That, it was.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. What you paused there for a second. What you were an older creationist at the time? You'd say.
Yeah, I wasn't a younger creationist anymore, but I would kind of be a old creationist at that time. But shortly after that experience, I was quickly becoming what I would call an atheist. I was like, no, I don't believe this. This is bullshit.
Okay, so would you agree with me that the Ark encounter, things that nature, and I know this sounds just, it sounds mundane because this is, an atheist narrative, but it's one atheist narrative that I think actually has grounded in truth, that the Ark encounter and that stuff makes people atheist. I think it really does.
It did for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of rational people that go to that kind of stuff go, wait, what? I mean, don't get me wrong. They have the true believers. But I think that there are a lot of people that go, I got to take pause in this. So I think it might be doing not more damage than good, but it is deconverting a certain amount of people because there's no possible way that many people are that irrational and that many people are that fundamentally uneducated. There's got to be some people who are going, hey, I'm a little smarter than this, and this is completely BS,
Yeah, I did kind of feel a little insulted. It's like, really, it's that kind of evidence that they had. It was very pretty to walk through. Some of the exhibits were very well done. I kind of like the rooms for each sun. Really well intricate, a lot of details that, like, hey, the apocalypse happens. I want to come and show this. This would be a cool place to live. But this is supposed to convince you that 2 of every kind of all living flesh was on that ark, and I don't see the room for it.
Yeah, it's just not. It's just. Yeah, it's so funny because people that go there, even they have to take a pause and go, wait a minute. If this was actually a replica, they need to explain this stuff. I've read the plaques and I've seen the dimensions. I haven't been there, but somebody has to stop and go, this just does not make sense from a logistic point of view. It's just, how do you feed? How do you water? No, they have some weird, explanations that are just way off the mark, that are just, because if they actually wanted to show it's possible, they need to stick like 1,000 animals in there and give it a go for a year. Let's see how that works out for them. I guarantee it. Those animals.
When I went, they didn't. When I went, they didn't have the petting zoo up yet, but they did have. I think it was like 3 donkeys off in like one corner with straw, and they had 5 animal handlers. So When I went, the Ark encounter had 3 live animals.
That's
it.
That's just somebody has to go. This is just nonsense. I mean, you can tell that they're catering to very dumb people at that point. It's just a sideshow.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you.
And those donkeys took up a lot of space.
And why they have 3?
I don't know. It's just,
that represents the Trinity?
someone was there. Everyone's out at the time, but it was a slow day.
Well, yeah, it's always a slow day there, and that's what's funny is because I think Ken Ham tries to obviously bloat the numbers. He actually once used a photo from a different time saying that was like the grand opening or something like that, and he's not an honest person. But anyways, we're going on an hour mark here. Do you want to see if anybody in the live chat got some questions for you, maybe?
Oh, absolutely. If anyone has questions, I'll do my best to answer them. I'm pretty open and honest.
All right, because I got to end soon because I do have other plans that I'm going to go eat and shower and freshen up because I literally just got up a little while ago. Jimmy's like, well, you didn't freshen up for me? I'm not special enough?
Honestly, I showered before this. I want to look presentable.
Yeah, I honestly didn't, and so I really feel like I need to. I'm sitting here hot, and I want to go freshen up.
Yeah. But I do appreciate, at least giving me the time to talk about this because I just kind of want to open the dialogue. If anybody is curious, wants to talk to me, I'm on Facebook. Add me, message me. I want to talk about this. So if you want to talk about it too, let's talk.
All right. Jimmy, the Messenger Reveal says, what information would Jimmy have to present with to consider believing and following a God again?
I don't know what would convince me, but I think a God would know what would convince me. And if I haven't been convinced, either he doesn't want to convince me or I haven't been presented that evidence yet. I'll keep an open mind, but I don't know. There's that quote by, forget who, but, any sufficient technology could appear as a God to us if we can't explain it. How do I know? I don't know.
Although I don't disagree with you, can I tell you why I think that's a non-answer? Because I think that possibly you do have an idea it would convince you. Because when somebody's asking you what's going to convince you, you can't just, yes, it's true that if God exists, he's going to know. That's kind of a throwaway comment. It's just trivially true if that was the case. But they're asking you what would. Now, to me, I mean, if everybody on the planet looked up and they saw Jehovah written in the stars and these bugles or trumpets coming out and angels flying around and you see this loud booming voice, I am God, Jehovah. That's going to be pretty damn convincing, right? Now, somebody could say, well, that could be aliens playing mind tricks. Okay, fire enough, but that's a brute fact, or a brute possibility, right? A bare possibility. That who cares about bare possibilities? If you started believing every bare possibility, your ontology would be bloated as shit. But if that was the case, and people are all witnessing this, and the earth is trembling, and let's say you do have an internalized feeling of spirituality or something like that, your spirit's lifted up or whatever. That's going to be pretty damn convincing. You don't think that would convince you?
Yeah, there could be things like, here's an example that might convince me. I was kind of looking into it earlier. Let's say we found the Garden of Eden very deep underground. It was this giant crater. It had this gateway with an angel with a flaming sword, and we found
Adam was
here, still alive there.
If you saw Adam loves Eve carved on a tree.
Yeah, and we dated the tree to be like 6,000 years old, and the tree was indestructible and had these magical fruit on it. It's like, you know what? I'm going to start considering the story. This is pretty damn convincing. And something like that would be cool to have experience.
Well, at least that's an answer. I mean, again, when somebody asks you what would make you believe, you need to give them some kind of answer. And this is why I think that your prior answer, while trivially true, was a non-answer. If that makes sense, Jimmy. Right?
Yeah. Okay. First one is the answer I usually give, but if you want me to give like a specific, I got to make something up, that could still be tricked somehow, but that would be like, oh wow, like 98%. This is like, I don't know how I'm going to get at this.
Yeah, like I said, if I'm going to be more willing to believe that God is rearranging the stars to spell his name Allah than alien intervention, right? I mean, let's say it wasn't an alien intervention. Okay, I'll just say I was wrong, but I think I'd be justified to believe it. And we're talking about justificatory conditions. What would justify you to believe that God exists? God spelling his name in the stars, Allah, with a booming voice and angels and trumpeting, that would do it for me. I think that should do it for most rational people. If
Yeah.
you can't justify believing in God after that, I really have to question your understanding of justification, because I think that'd be very hard pressed to try to tell me even after that you want to be justified. You know, or even worse, you're dead and God exists, and you're like, well, I still don't believe in you. That'd be kind of weird. Team Skeptic, great show, bud. Let's link soon. Yeah, thank you, bud. Anytime. I really like hanging out with Team Skeptic. He's such a great guy. Pickle Swig Bucket. Was there a specific topic that led Jimmy to do more digging to then figure out the truth?
The age of the earth was kind of the biggest thing. Just, flood makes certain predictions. When I try to learn about this stuff, you go to creationist sites, you'll learn one narrative, but you go to biology or you go to geology, because astronomy, astrology, they're all pointing to one thing. Creation is pointing to another. I'm trying to find multiple lines of evidence that are leading to a logical conclusion best I can. And so when I learn about just not really anything specific, but just all of it, just more about cosmology, more about biology, more about chemistry, the more pieces of the puzzle I know, the more I can kind of piece it together and get a better picture. All of it just kind of comes, not just one thing, it's all of them, because it's all of them.
Korak says, completely disagree, Steve. It's one thing for you to be convinced, but to say that if you're not convinced that by that you have to question my rationality, that's not what I said. You changed the word on me. I said question your understanding of justification. I didn't say you had to believe, but if you don't think that's enough justification for somebody to believe, then I do have to question your understanding of justification. If somebody doesn't believe after that, I'm not questioning their rationality. I'm questioning their understanding of justification. There's a huge distinct difference between the two. But again, what would it take that would be so overwhelming to convince you that God exists? I think that for a rational person, you have to have a line of demarcation of what would convince you. I think a little disingenuous answer to say, well, I don't know what convinced me. Then either you haven't pondered it, which wouldn't be disingenuous, or that you just don't want to answer that question for some reason. I think most of us have pondered that question. So I think most of us have an idea in their head what would convince us, right? So I'm not questioning people's rationality if that would happen and they don't believe it. What I'm questioning is that if some other people believed it, and you said, hey, that person is not justified to believe it, then I'm questioning that, because of course the person is justified to believe it. I would believe that, and I'd be perfectly justified to believe that was God spelling out the name Allah with trumpets sounding and angels appearing and bodies coming out of the graves and all that stuff. I would be perfectly justified to believe that was a deity, right? To say otherwise, to me, is just ludicrous. Would you agree on that, Jimmy, or disagree?
Yeah, like if I saw the four horsemen of the apocalypse rise out of the ground, I saw the signs as was depicted, I heard trumpets in the air blaring, it's like, okay, I'm going to start considering at this point, this may be at least sufficient evidence to say this is now a viable option.
Right.
So there are certain things that we can come across, but I haven't come across anything sufficient yet.
Yeah. And I understand docile and voluntarist, Corey. We don't choose our beliefs, but still, people will actively fight against certain narratives, right? I mean, you still have some control over that, right? Not everything is doceastically and voluntarist, and so when people willfully try to come up with a narrative to try to not believe something in order to rationalize, right? That is something that what I'm talking about, right? So we can actually come up with things on our own to say, I don't want to believe in this, and I will have. That's what cognitive dissonance is sort of kind of right. I'm compartmentalizing different things in my mind, or you're just not wanting to believe something. And when somebody says, well, I would not believe this no matter what, that's pretty close-minded, right? But again, we're not talking about their belief. We're talking about justification for somebody else. If this happened, and I said, I believe this now. I believe that I'm justified to believe this now that God exists because of what he spelling his name in the stars, and you say, Steve, I don't think you're justified. That's what I'm questioning, right? I'm questioning people's if that's not a justificatory condition, I don't know what would be, right? I would think people are perfectly justified to believe God exists if that's the case. I think people are perfectly justified with much lesser evidence. Oh man, we get into a lot of different topics this particular discussion, didn't we, man? Wow.
Yeah, this was fun. I usually talk a lot about stuff. People This is how it usually goes with me, guys.
Yeah, these types of discussions are fun. I don't do them a lot. I probably need to do more. I think people find them interesting. I had somebody at the very beginning of this hangout say, every time I watch Steve's channel, I learn something. And that's one of the greatest compliments I can get. That it doesn't even have to be learned from me. It's just learned from anybody, right? I'm much happier if I have an expert on. They're telling people something and people go, I did not know that, right? That's great. I mean, I'm fine when it happens with me too. If somebody says, "Hey, I didn't know that," and Steve was right on that. Like the other day, we were talking about the Hardy-Weinberg formula for an idealized population, which I mentioned to Sygart during his debate with Arn, and I said that's a useful fiction, and just like ideal gas law. Now he disagreed with me on air there, but when he came over to me on this channel, he thought about it and he's like, "Yeah, actually, Steve, you're right on that. It is for an idealized population. We still use it." Because people misunderstood me and they didn't understand what a useful fiction was, and they just thought I was saying that the HW equilibrium formula or the ideal gas law were fictions. That's not what that means. A useful fiction is a very specific term in philosophy, meaning that it's for an idealized state, but it still has utility. We still use the ideal gas law, even though it is a useful fiction. It doesn't actually exist in ontological speaking because there's no such thing as an ideal gas. And but we discussed it, right? We were like, let's discuss this. And once he recognized what I was actually saying, he was like, yes, Steve, you're right. These are productive conversations, and people will learn from that.
I don't mind being wrong because that means you don't have to be wrong anymore. You get to learn something and you can improve your knowledge, your arguments. And a lot of people they're not really interested in being proven wrong. They just want to prove they're right to other people.
Yeah, I see that a lot, actually. And 62 Callium says, no, Steve, you could just be losing your mind and seeing things. That's irrelevant. Again, these are the type of throwaway comments. No offense to 62 Callum, but these are the type of throwaway comments that are just non-productive. They have no useful rejoinder on that. That is completely irrelevant to anything I said. These are, again, bare possibilities. We're talking about justification. It could be a bazillion other bare possibilities, but that doesn't matter to the fact that I would be perfectly justified to believe God exists given those conditions. So these are the type of comments that I'm trying to get atheists to stop using because they're just throwaway comments. They add nothing to the discussion because they just are not proper rejoinders, in my opinion. Same thing when I try to explain to people when people say, well, I'm an atheist because I haven't been exposed to enough evidence to convince me that God exists. That's a throwaway comment. That has no practical value. It's vacuous. And I've actually wrote a blog on that particular thing about why it's vacuous. What's that?
It's like saying I disbelieve because I lack belief. But
yeah.
It doesn't say anything. It's just obvious. Like, I understand, but why do you lack a belief?
Yeah, that's exactly what I use too. It's like saying that I lack a belief because I lack a belief, or I disbelieve because I disbelieve. These are circular things because clearly, if you had enough evidence, you would believe. So it's in order to have a justificatory condition. This is why I put forth it. And I've had these discussions with epistemologists before. I haven't had one that really has said I'm fundamentally wrong on it. But the way I look at it is this: if I'm able to deduce through deduction something that is not giving me any information, deduction doesn't tell us anything new. Induction does. And so if I'm able to deduce that you haven't been exposed to enough evidence to convince you, then that cannot be used as a justification. You have to tell me why you don't believe or why you believe that God does not exist. Either one. And in order to do that, you need to give me evidence, or not evidence. You need to give me information that I cannot get via deduction. I mean, I could maybe do by induction, but in that case, it could be wrong. You have to tell me what your reasoning is. And so if I said something that or somebody says something to me that I can just figure out on my own, how is that an explanation for anything? That's not telling me anything new. I want to know what your reasons are, and your reasons are with something that I just could not do deductively. And so when people say, well, I don't believe because I've not been exposed to enough evidence, well, clearly that's deductively inferential, to be inferred inferentially, because if you were exposed to enough evidence, you would believe. And since you don't believe, logic, it means that you haven't been exposed to that kind of evidence or that sufficient amount of evidence. It's not that hard to think that way. But again, I'm trying to up the game for atheists. I want them to have better arguments. And when people come against me and say, well, look at Steve going against atheists. No, I'm not. I actually support a lot of atheist channels like Atheist Edge and Fully Deconverted. But they at least want to elevate the level of discourse. They don't want to use these throwaway statements any longer that I hear. Like, no offense, but I hear a lot of on AXP. They have a lot of throwaway statements.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to do, is that I'm just trying to find what are the good arguments, what are the bad arguments. Some arguments are just bad. And so even if I might agree with, your conclusion down the line, if you're getting there the wrong way, point out to you, it's like, hey, buddy, you're right, but it's not the way you think it is. Let's,
yeah,
use good arguments. I don't want you to have a bad argument because it makes me look bad if I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think there are bad arguments all around. Corrig Nightwolf says, Steve, thanks for clarifying for me. I'm actually agnostic about what would convince me, but open-minded. Well, first of all, it's good that you're open-minded. That is an epistemic virtue, they call, right? We have different types of virtue ethics, right? There's virtue ethics and there's virtue epistemology. Virtue epistemology, open-mindedness is a virtue, so we should be open-minded. Doesn't mean be gullible. It just means we should be able to recognize that given enough information, we should be able to reevaluate our positions. But I don't know what he means by agnostic on that. If you haven't decided what would convince you, that doesn't really mean you're agnostic, because I don't know what the proposition would be there. A proposition would be a specific thing that says, God writing his name in the stars would convince me that God exists. That would be either true or false, right? You could be agnostic and go, I don't know if that would really convince me or not. So I think it would only apply to maybe just a specific proposition, but maybe I'm getting too myopic on that. I'll take the hit for that if that's the case. And Rayleigh asks, I'm taking her away her wrench forever. No, I'm just kidding. She says, doubt is a virtue. Yeah, right. That's one thing that always will bug me, is that Kyle misled people on that. And I think he did for willfully, just because he didn't like the fact that I gave an actual argument from philosophy, and that Ozzy gave an actual argument from philosophy, and that anybody who understands virtue epistemology would say that there's no possible way doubt would be a virtue, because that's something we just don't strive for. But I didn't like the fact that he was just misleading people away from the actual understanding that it is in philosophy. Now, again, I see that a lot with other atheists doing things like that. And it's just a little disconcerting, because if you want to go and learn these topics and you want to go to college, you're not going to be taking advice from, I'm sorry, half the atheist community out there that just BSing people for narrative and BSing people for agenda. And to me, it puts them in the same category as any theist, because a lot of them putting forth an agenda as well. This is why I like being in the middle there. I just will say, look, I think that you're putting forth a bad narrative, you're putting forth a bad narrative, or I agree and say both of you are putting forth a good narrative. I like to be more, I hate to use the word objective there, but I like to be a little more objective in my approach, because I'm not beholden to any specific position or ideology. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Any other questions from the chat?
No, I think they're they're wrapping it up. I think they really like the kind of conversations, and I do as well. I'm going to be having more often these types of things. Maybe tomorrow, actually at 3:00 today, I got Dapper Dino. I'm going to be on his channel. Tomorrow, I think I'm just finalizing it, but I think I have Atheist versus Logic coming back at 6:00 tomorrow, my time, Pacific, 9:00 Eastern. I'm not sure who I'm going to have on with him. He was supposed to be a friend, but the friend couldn't make it. But we're going to be discussing young Earth creationism with him. So I need to find who I want to bring on as a co-host for that, because Cheshire's not available. So let me know. I don't want to dogpile him, so I don't know if I want to have one or two people on with him. But if you're interested in that and you're available at 6:00 tomorrow, somebody out there in the live chat, message me. And if you're somebody who really knows the narratives of younger creationism, especially from a biological point of view, because the guy likes really running biological scripts like ribosomes and messenger RNA and all this stuff is just, impossible in a purely naturalistic framework. Something I disagree with. Even though I'm not a naturalist, I think a lot of things are just because of biochemical reactions. But if you're interested in joining me tomorrow night, somebody out there in the live chat at 6 o'clock Pacific to talk to Atheist versus Logic, his name's Jeremy. Not doxing. I've asked him if I use his name. Let me know. Okay, and then like I said, we're going to be having a lot of discussions like that. Hey Gary, howdy bro. Listening to this while we're building the back deck. Thank you, buddy. But anyways, yeah, Jimmy, thanks for joining us, man. I mean, again, I appreciate the fact that you've been around for a very long time, and I've watched your progression. If people want to go have a conversation with him, you can do it in the Great Debate community. You can do it. Well, how many communities are you in? You're in a lot of them on Facebook.
YouTube, I don't have like a channel, but you can message me and I'll check my inbox there. I'm really active on Facebook. It's going to be hard to get a hold of me on Twitter because that's a fake account that's just used to mess with people. But Facebook's the best way to get a hold of me. Add me, I'll add you back, or just message me. Find me in one of the groups. I'm in like the Kent Hovind discussion group, Creationism versus Atheism, all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah, the Kent. Man, I love that Kent Hovind group. You know the history of that group, real quick. That group started off being a fan group for Hovind, and eventually Creationists started leaving in droves, and it got taken over by anti-Hovinists. There's still a few Creationists around, but yeah, that used to be a fan. From my understanding, that used to be a fan group of Hovind. So, progress. Yeah. I'm not on Facebook that much any longer. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. Those groups. Plus, I've been removed from like a couple of them. The only one I'm still in that they don't seem to care is believe it or not, is the Atheism Experience group. Official discussion. They haven't removed me, and I don't think they plan to. But I've been removed from AR. I've been removed from Atheism Insiders Philosophy, or Philosophical Atheism Insiders, which they turned out to be, So, all right. So,
but if anybody,
go ahead.
I was just going to say at the very end, I wanted to put it in. If anyone's interested, I'm actually might be on Modern Day Debates channel as long as it goes through later tonight at 9. I'm going to talk to G-Man about the live.
Why would you do such a thing? Why are you giving that guy any time? I mean, just the guy, he has something physically or mentally wrong with him. I mean, don't you think you're kind of kicking a puppy at this point?
My goal isn't to go in there to really prove anything that he says is really wrong. Well, I want to talk to him because I can be a little bit more patient than some people. I just want to walk him through and discuss what do you believe and why, kind of like how I did on this show. And I just want to walk him through it and just kind of break it down a little bit. I think maybe there's a chance to have a dialogue.
All right. Well, anyways, guys, by the way, Chemo, if you want Scott Clifton to come back, message him. Tweet him out. Matter of fact, you got 130 people watching. Somebody tweeted and then people retweet it. I want Scott to come back too. I messaged him the other day about something. I don't remember the discussion, but he didn't get back to me. But yeah, let him know. Hey, we want you back on Steve's channel. He's a nice guy. I've known Clifton for a while. I know of him. We've communicated. I've only had him on the channel once, but he actually follows me now on Twitter, so that's kind of cool. I appreciate that. Prepper, I'll be in LAX area on the 22nd. I'll be actually in Washington, D.C., I think, on the 22nd. So I won't be in the area. I'm sorry, man. I'm flying out of town, I think, is the plans. Well, at least I'll solidify my plans sometime later today, I think. All right, I think that's about it for the live chat. So, hey, Jimmy, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, all the people that watch this and the people that are supporting this channel. As you can tell, I have my counter up there. 48 days, people. 48 days! I am going to keep people in the loop on that. But 48 days, so anybody who says that I was going to get paid who still believes this, there you go. 48 days. You may want to rethink your position here because we're now spending thousands of dollars in order to sue. So if these people are like, oh, you're gonna get paid, and people are gonna keep their promises to you, I guarantee you're wrong. I think I'm pretty well certain of that. I'm not gonna guarantee it. Miracles do happen, but I would definitely say that the odds are pretty low that I'm gonna get paid before this goes to legal suit, because it's being filed very shortly. The paperwork's being solidified in the next couple of days. So Anyways, Jimmy, thanks a lot, buddy. Peace, guys. And I'll see you on Dopper Dino's channel at 3 p.m. my time. Okay? And with that, good night.